Willow Creek Estates had all the charm of a suburban utopia: white picket fences, perfectly manicured lawns, and street names like Whispering Pines and Meadow Lane. But beneath the surface of this picture-perfect neighborhood pulsed the cold, rigid heartbeat of the homeowners association. I had moved here 3 years ago, a quiet corner of the state where people waved at each other but rarely got too close. It suited me. My life had become about quiet reflection and remembering my father through our greatest shared project, a 1967 Chevrolet Corvette Stingray. Cherry red, fully restored, and humming like a lion in deep thought. That car was more than transportation. It was a monument to time, blood, and familial love. I parked it in my driveway. Always clean. Always covered with a custom-fitted tarp unless I was taking her for a ride. She didn't fit in my garage. It was too narrow, a flaw in the cookie-cutter housing design. But she belonged in the open. Visible. Revered. For a while, no one seemed to mind. The neighbors would stop by just to ask about the vet. Some offered to buy it. One kid from 3 houses down asked if he could sit in it for his prom photos. The car became a fixture of Willow Creek, a glimmer of soul in an otherwise sterile suburb. Then Karen moved in. Karen, real name Cassandra Whitmore Davenport, descended on our street like a storm in a pastel twin set. Tall, brisk, with a permanent squint that suggested the sun and her neighbors were both equally offensive. She introduced herself with a clipboard and a handshake so limp it felt like a threat. Within 3 weeks, she had volunteered for the HOA board. Within 5, she was president. The first knock came on a Wednesday. "Good morning," she chirped, her voice lacquered in artificial cheer. "I just wanted to remind you about the community guidelines regarding driveway aesthetics." I blinked at her. "Excuse me?" She nodded toward the Corvette. "Vehicles are to be stored in enclosed garages when not in use. It's in the bylaws." "It's a classic," I said, trying to keep the irritation out of my voice. "Doesn't fit in the garage, and it's always covered and maintained. Never an eyesore." Her smile thinned. "Well, aesthetics are subjective, Mr. Lawson. Rules are rules." That night, I pulled out the HOA handbook. There it was. Article 7, Section 3. No inoperable or unsightly vehicles may be stored in view of the street. My Corvette was neither. The wording was vague, intentionally so, but I still felt safe. It was a stretch to call a gleaming Stingray unsightly. A week later, I received a letter. Then another. Then a fine. $50. Then $100. Then $250. Each one accused me of violating a regulation that had never existed before. The citations quoted Section 9.4.1, prohibited display of recreational or vintage vehicles in driveways. I flipped through my copy of the handbook. There was no 9.4.1. At the next HOA meeting, I brought the matter up. The room was a sea of polite disinterest, but I pressed on. "I'd like to know when Section 9.4.1 was added," I said, holding up my well-worn handbook. Karen, seated at the front table like a queen at court, gave a tight-lipped smile. "The bylaws were updated last quarter. All homeowners were notified via email." I never received an email. "Perhaps it went to your spam folder," she said, dismissively. I requested a copy of the updated bylaws. What I received was a freshly stapled packet with a watermark reading, revised April, 2 weeks after her first knock. They were making up the rules as they went along. The more I resisted, the more they escalated. I parked the car down the street, then back in my driveway the next night. Another fine. Another letter. I challenged every one of them, and every time, Karen cited vague community standards or untraceable clauses. She had an answer for everything, a justification for every fabricated rule. Neighbors started to avoid me. Some out of fear, others because they'd been burned by Karen's wrath themselves. She had fined the Jenkins family for using colored mulch instead of HOA-approved brown. Sent a violation notice to the Liu household for having a basketball hoop visible from the road. No one wanted to be the next target. But the Corvette was personal. To Karen, it was a violation. To me, it was memory, a symbol of resilience. I wasn't going to back down. 2 months into the feud, the fines hit $1,000. I refused to pay. That's when the threats began. Failure to comply may result in legal recourse. One letter read. Vehicle may be subject to removal under HOA Code 14.3.2. Another warned. Code 14.3.2 didn't exist. I checked again. It still didn't. I attended another meeting, this time with a printed timeline of events, photo evidence of the car's pristine condition, and a polite but firm request for the fines to be dismissed. Karen listened, nodded, then dismissed me with a wave of her hand. The board will take it under advisement. No decision ever came, but something else did. One morning, I stepped out onto my porch, coffee in hand, and stared at the empty space where the Corvette had always sat.
Gone.
Not a scratch, not a note, just the ghost of tire marks and the echo of something being taken. My stomach dropped. I scanned the street. No one had seen anything. I called the police. They arrived within the hour. Any chance it was towed? The officer asked, a notepad in hand. Why would it be towed? He pointed to a printed notice stapled to my mailbox. HOA letterhead. The same red and black ink Karen always used. Vehicle removed per Compliance Code 14.3.2. It read. Unauthorized permanent parking in common view. There it was again. That phantom clause. The one that didn't exist. But now it did. The officer took a photo. You'll want to follow up with your HOA. If they towed it, they should tell you where. I was already dialing their office number. Karen answered on the first ring. Willow Creek Homeowners Association. This is Karen speaking. It's Lawson. My car's gone. Yes, I was informed. It was removed per the new compliance protocol. It had become a persistent violation. You had no right. On the contrary, she said smoothly. As per the updated bylaws, Section 14.3.2 permits the HOA to impound vehicles in breach of community standards. That rule wasn't in place last week. It was passed unanimously during the last emergency board meeting. I want to know where my car is. She paused, then said, It has been relocated to a secure storage facility. You'll need to file a petition for its release. You stole my car. That's a very serious accusation, Mr. Lawson. I suggest you tread carefully. She hung up. I stood on my porch, phone still in hand, coffee cooling in the sun. My driveway had never looked so empty. Something had shifted. This wasn't about fines or rules anymore. This was war. The next morning felt like a bad dream, wearing real skin. My Corvette gone. My calls to the HOA office went unanswered. My emails were met with automated replies. Even my neighbor, Mr. Hensley, who used to chat with me about baseball over the fence, avoided eye contact as he watered his hydrangeas. 2 days passed. Then, a letter arrived in a crisp envelope bearing the HOA seal. It was Karen style, overly formal, soaked in legalese. It stated that my vehicle had been removed and was currently being held until I filed a formal appeal. It cited noncompliance under HOA bylaw 14.3.2, again referencing that ghost clause. I filed the appeal, included photos, documents, a notarized copy of the original HOA handbook. I requested the car's location and immediate release.
A week went by.
Silence. Then, while driving home from the hardware store, I saw something that nearly made me drive off the road. My Corvette.
Cruising down Maple Drive. Top down.
Chrome gleaming in the sun. It was unmistakable. Even from a block away, I knew every line, every curve of that car. But the woman behind the wheel?
Karen.
Wearing oversized sunglasses, her platinum bob tucked under a silk scarf. She waved to a neighbor, laughing, like she had just returned from a spa retreat. I slammed a U-turn, tires screeching, heart pounding. She turned into the HOA clubhouse parking lot and parked in a space labeled Board President Only. I pulled in behind her so fast, she jumped at the sound of my brakes. What the hell are you doing? I demanded, storming toward her. She adjusted her sunglasses, calm as ever. Mr. Lawson, please lower your voice. You're creating a scene. You're driving my car. This vehicle is now considered a community asset, she said. Per the new initiative, Rolling Heritage, the HOA is permitted to repurpose unclaimed or non-compliant vintage items for communal benefit. We're using it for promotional purposes. Promotional purposes? We'll be showcasing it in the summer parade. And a photo shoot for the Willow Creek monthly newsletter. You stole my car, Karen.
No.
You abandoned a recurring violation. We acted within our rights. I turned to the few onlookers who had gathered, mouths agape. This is theft, I said aloud, hoping anyone, would chime in. But no one spoke. Not even the teenage lifeguard who had once begged to take a selfie with the Corvette. I called the police that night. The responding officer took my statement, brows raised with each detail. When I explained the phantom bylaw and showed my original handbook, he took photos and promised to follow up. But the next day, I received a call. Sir, according to the documents we reviewed, the HOA has possession rights until the civil dispute is resolved. It's a legal gray area. We can't intervene without a court order. Karen had buried my Corvette in red tape. She knew exactly how long civil cases took. Knew I didn't have the money or time to spend 6 months in small claims court while she joyrode my father's legacy. I tried hiring a lawyer. A good one. Cynthia Vega, sharp, assertive, and direct. She looked through the letters, the notices, the revised bylaws. This is a scam, she said. But it's sophisticated. She's fabricating bureaucracy to give herself cover. You're going to need more than complaints, you need a smoking gun. So I went hunting for one. I started by attending every HOA meeting with a recorder in my pocket and a folder under my arm. I asked questions. Lots of them. The board always looked uncomfortable. Especially Karen. Her smiles got tighter. Her patience thinner. Then came a breakthrough. I met with Sam Patel, a former board member who had stepped down a few months prior. I left because of her, he said. She was making up rules, pushing votes through without a quorum. When I called her out, she rewrote the minutes. He handed me a thumb drive. Here's the meeting I recorded on March 10th. Compare it to the official transcript she released.
I did.
What I heard and what was documented were two different worlds. In the audio, there was no vote on 14.3.2. No discussion of vehicle policy updates. Just talk about the upcoming garden contest and a broken swing set at the park. But the printed minutes showed unanimous approval of the new bylaw.
Forgery.
Plain and simple. I needed more. So I called in a favor from Marcus, an old friend who worked in city IT. He pulled the security footage from the HOA clubhouse. The night before the updated bylaws had been sent out, Karen was caught on camera inside the office, alone, for over 4 hours. Printing.
Signing.
Shuffling papers. She wasn't updating community documents. She was manufacturing evidence. Now I had something tangible. I compiled it all, audio, footage, witness statements.
Sent it to Cynthia.
Her response was immediate. We've got her. We filed a formal cease and desist, coupled with a demand letter for the immediate return of the Corvette. Attached were the falsified documents, the security footage, and the audio recordings. Karen responded with a smug email. All vehicle claims are subject to board review. Your appeal is pending. Any attempt to recover the asset without board consent will be treated as trespassing. She was doubling down. And then she went too far. One of the neighbors, Eli, a retired postal worker, knocked on my door. You should see this, he said, holding out his phone. It was a social media post from Karen's cousin, Brittany. Standing in front of my Corvette, grinning. New whip for summer. Shout out to my amazing cousin Karen for the hookup. The post was geotagged in Tucson, Arizona. I stared at the image, disbelief giving way to rage. She hadn't just commandeered my car. She sold it. My lawyer sprang into action. We contacted the Tucson PD, armed with a title, VIN number, and original purchase documents. Within days, the car was located at a private storage facility, dusty and idle. The officers called me personally. You're listed as the legal owner. The vehicle is being held pending verification, but once cleared, you can come get it. I flew to Arizona, paid for shipping, and just like that, my Corvette was back. Scratched. One of the seats torn. But it was home. Karen had gone from bureaucratic bully to criminal. She'd crossed a line that couldn't be papered over with fake clauses and forged documents. But if she thought that was the end, she hadn't learned a thing. The real reckoning was just beginning. Karen had built her throne on fake bylaws and forced silence. But now the cracks in her empire were beginning to show. My Corvette was back in my driveway, albeit with a scratched fender and a torn seat. It still hurt to look at it, but now it hurt less than not fighting back. Cynthia and I filed a civil suit, fraud, conversion, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. But Karen wasn't shaken. Her emails to the HOA members framed the lawsuit as a petty vendetta from a disgruntled homeowner. She still smiled at every meeting, waving from the podium as if she weren't being investigated. The thing about tyrants is, they don't fall from power. They unravel. I began documenting everything publicly. I launched a blog, Behind the Picket Fence, and uploaded my timeline, the audio files from Sam Patel, the security footage from Marcus, and even excerpts from the forged minutes. I linked every piece of evidence. It spread faster than I expected. By the end of the week, half the neighborhood had read it. Anonymous tips began flooding my inbox. Complaints about unexplained fines. Suddenly lost appeals. Dues that had quietly increased under the radar. And every one of them could be traced back to Karen. One tip stood out. She owns a storage unit on the east side of town, the email read. Unit 114. HOA records, supposedly. But she doesn't let anyone else in. Marcus pulled traffic camera data. Sure enough, Karen visited that storage facility every Thursday like clockwork. We subpoenaed the unit contents. Inside were HOA documents dating back years, voting ballots with identical handwriting, blank citation forms pre-signed, and even a rubber stamp of the treasurer's signature, long after the real treasurer had resigned.
It was more than a pattern. It was a system.
The judge granted us a preliminary injunction. Karen was suspended from her duties, pending the outcome of the case. A new interim board was assembled, with Sam Patel at the helm. And just like that, the aura of untouchability around Karen evaporated. But she didn't go quietly. 3 days after her suspension, I found my mailbox ripped off its post. The Corvette cover had been slashed open. Sugar in the gas tank. I caught it before starting the engine. Thank God, but the message was clear.
She wanted to punish me.
I reported everything. The interim board added 24-hour patrols in the neighborhood. The police increased their presence. And still, Karen lurked. She'd been spotted outside the clubhouse late at night, parked across from the Patel residence, wandering the community park, muttering to herself. Cynthia advised me to get a restraining order.
I did.
But Karen had one final card to play. I came home one evening to find a city code enforcement officer waiting in my driveway. Mr. Lawson? Yes. We received a formal complaint. Anonymous tip. Your garage has been illegally modified and your home may not be up to current fire safety standards. The inspection lasted over an hour. He measured door frames, checked outlets, opened cabinets. When he left, I followed him down the street. Where did the complaint come from? He hesitated, then said, it was routed through a legal proxy. Hard to trace. But off the record? This isn't the first time we've been used like this by an angry HOA official. He gave me a card. If she pushes again, let me know. But I wouldn't need his help. That night, I got a call from Brittany, the same cousin who'd posted about the new whip in Arizona. Hey,
I think we need to talk, she said.
I met her the next morning at a coffee shop 20 minutes out of town. I didn't know what Karen was really doing, she said, stirring her coffee nervously. She told me the car was abandoned, said she was doing you a favor, and that you were some hermit hoarder holed up with court fines and unpaid taxes. She told you I abandoned a Corvette worth $85,000? She made it sound like you were mentally unwell. Said she had legal guardianship over you through the HOA. Honestly, it was convincing until the news broke. She pulled out her phone and slid it across the table. She told me to delete this before you found it. I didn't. It was a video, Karen, seated in the Corvette, laughing. If he wanted it so bad, she sneered to the camera, He shouldn't have left it in the open like a stray dog. She waved a set of keys. Finders keepers. Why did you keep it? I asked. Brittany shrugged. Because my conscience is louder than hers. That video was the nail in the coffin. Cynthia submitted it as part of our civil suit. But it didn't stop there. The interim board launched an independent audit. They uncovered over $40,000 in administrative spending over 2 years that could not be traced to receipts, invoices, or vendor contracts. She had embezzled funds, falsified bylaws, committed mail fraud. Karen Whitmore Davenport was arrested within the week. The mugshot hit the local news. The headline read, HOA president charged with fraud, theft, and vandalism. The neighborhood sighed in collective relief. Lawn chairs appeared in driveways again. Kids played basketball without fear of citations. The clubhouse reopened its pool. And my Corvette? It finally sat, pristine and untouchable, in the newly approved covered carport Sam helped me build with special permission from the board. I thought it would feel like the end. But revenge is a strange thing. When it's finally over, when the monster falls and the village is free, you don't feel victory. You feel peace. Karen's arrest echoed beyond our cul-de-sac. Local news picked up the story, dubbing her Corvette Karen, while HOA forums across the state lit up with heated debates about unchecked power, corrupt boards, and the need for stricter homeowner protections. For once, the conversation wasn't about grass height or paint swatches. It was about accountability. Her trial date was set for 3 months later, but even before that, the wave she left behind reshaped Willow Creek. The interim board put in sweeping reforms, digital minutes accessible to all residents, third-party audits of finances, and a motion to prevent any board member from serving more than 2 consecutive terms. The neighborhood transformed. Fear gave way to collaboration. Neighbors began talking again, not whispering in paranoia, but laughing over grills, waving during dog walks. I got invited to more backyard barbecues in a month than I had in the last 5 years. And my Corvette? She was fully restored, courtesy of a local mechanic who'd followed my blog and offered to repair the scratches and interior damage at cost. You stood up to her, he said. Least I can do is help you put the queen back on her throne. By the time Karen's court date arrived, her once pristine image had eroded into caricature. She walked into the courthouse with her designer bag, but no allies. Her attorney tried painting her as a misunderstood leader, someone overburdened by civic responsibility who made a few bad decisions in pursuit of community harmony. But the evidence said otherwise. Cynthia presented a timeline so precise it could have been plotted by a crime novelist. We had signed statements, forged documents, stolen assets, financial records, and that damning video from Brittany. The judge didn't need much deliberation. Karen was convicted on multiple counts: fraud, misappropriation of funds, and grand theft auto. She was sentenced to 5 years, with eligibility for parole in 2. She cried in court, but not out of remorse. Out of disbelief. The queen had fallen. And she still didn't understand why the peasants revolted. Afterward, Cynthia and I stood outside the courthouse. Reporters buzzed around like gnats, but I ignored them. You feel like it's over? She asked. I don't know, I said. I think I feel responsible. For what? For not standing up sooner. For letting her get that far. She nodded slowly. That's what tyrants count on. Silence. She gave me a small smile. But you didn't stay silent. I didn't. 2 months after the trial, the HOA held a community meeting in the park. No suits, no gavel. Just lawn chairs and lemonade. Sam handed me the mic halfway through. I didn't plan to speak, I said, but I guess I should say something. Not about Karen. She's behind us. But about what comes next. Heads turned. Some nodded. Even the skeptics leaned in. We can't afford to tune out again. HOA rules matter. Yeah, but so do the people behind them. If you see something shady, say it. If a neighbor's struggling, help. We don't need a watchdog, we need each other. There was a pause. Then applause. I looked over at the Corvette parked nearby. It shimmered in the sunset like a sentinel. Still mine. Always mine. Later that week, I received a letter. Not from the HOA, but from a national homeowner rights coalition. Your blog and documentation inspired several communities to reevaluate their HOA structures. We'd like to invite you to speak at our annual convention.
Me.
A speaker. The guy who almost lost everything. I accepted. Not out of pride, but because I realized something. What happened to me wasn't just about a car or a bad neighbor.
It was about voice. And justice.
And if I could help others find theirs, then all of it was worth it. Now, when I drive through Willow Creek, people wave. They honk. One kid even asked if the Corvette had superpowers. Only one, I told him. It brought the truth to light.